Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for swinging by. It's appreciated. Macro thoughts. The last time this gauge flashed bullish, Bitcoin gained as much as 23% before the rally cooled. That's via crypto, currently trading at 8,310. And this I found interesting from Pinecone Macro. BTC correlation to Chinese flight capital is pretty impressive, and indeed it is. And then Peter L. Brent, who I follow quite religiously these days, the logical target in Bitcoin is 11,500, the March 2018 high, and the level at which the parabolic advance was violated in January 2018. Home thoughts. Animals are becoming more nocturnal just to avoid humans. After centuries of animal captivity, poaching and urban expansion, animals are now actively trying to avoid our presence by becoming more nocturnal. A new study published in Science looked at the behavior of 62 mammal species across 6 continents and discovered that 83% of these species are becoming increasingly more active after dark. Lead author Caitlin Gaynor explains that human activity is creating a more nocturnal, natural world, and adds that the trend is both powerful and striking. Gaynor goes as far as to compare us to the dinosaurs, explaining that mammals were active entirely at night, because dinosaurs were the ubiquitous, terrifying force on the planet, but now humans are the ubiquitous, terrifying force on the planet. It was an incredible bit of research done by the folks in the Samburu, and they had put a tracker on an elephant that went all the way up to Somalia and came back to Samburu, and it was moving entirely at night. Photographer takes selfie in the eye of a deadly snake in South Africa. The boomslang's venom is considered more dangerous than cobras or the infamous black mamba. Quite an extraordinary photograph. I like this from Jazza Study. Champions are made from something they have deep inside them, a desire, a dream, a vision. And then this caught my attention, the emptiness within and the emptiness without. When I was first in Orford, it was forbidden to approach the island, but now there was no longer any obstacle to going there, since some years before the Ministry of Defence had abandoned secret research at that site. One of the men sitting idly on the harbour wall offered to take me over for a few pounds and fetch me later, after I had had a look around. As we crossed the river in his blue-painted boat, he told me that people still mostly avoid it, Orfordness. Even the beach fishermen, who were no strangers to solitude, had given up night fishing out there, allegedly because it wasn't worth their while, but in reality because they couldn't stand the God-forsaken loneliness of that outpost in the middle of nowhere, and in some cases even became emotionally disturbed for some time. And then there is a short description by Seabold, who sets out to explore the island. The day was dull and oppressive. There was little breeze, that not even the ears of the delicate quaking grass were nodding. It was as if I was passing through an undiscovered country, and I still remember that I felt, at the same time, both utterly liberated and deeply despondent. I had not a single thought in my head. With each step that I took, the emptiness within and the emptiness without grew ever greater, and the silence more profound. Perhaps that was why I was frightened almost to death when a hare that had been hiding in the tufts of grass by the wayside started up, right at my feet, and shot off down the rough track before darting sideways this way and that. I just found the photographs quite haunting. Political reflections: Pakistan heads to the polls in a crucial election for the for US and China ties, says Bloomberg. It is a crucial election, and I think Imran Khan has won it. The Emir of Qatar has been visiting Theresa May. Pepe Escobar, in a typically irreverent article in the Asia Times, writes that President Trump's late-night all-caps tweet of mass destruction threatening Iran is bound to be enshrined in the art of diplomacy annals. This past weekend, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei said he would support blocking all Middle East oil exports through the Strait of Hormuz if Iran's European trade partners succumb to pressure from Washington and stop buying Iranian oil altogether. The President Hassan Rouhani followed Khamenei and warned the US about playing with the lion's tail. The fact remains that the Trump administration ditched a UN-sponsored multilateral treaty and has now launched serious covert ops with the ultimate goal of regime change in Iran. Khamenei and Rouhani are on the same page, and that's very significant in itself. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif provided the coup de grace, tweeting that Iran had lasted millennia and had seen many empires fall. He wrapped up with an all-caps Trumpism: be cautious. It was always possible that Trump's all-caps spectacular may be a ruse to distract Americans from the Helsinki treason scandal. That gets traction when associated to the looming midterm elections and Trump's absolute need to sound tough and keep the Republicans in line. Call it a brilliant Trump strategic maneuver, or was it Putin's? War hysteria already on is extremely irresponsible. In the worst Strait of Hormuz scenario, the US Navy would be impotent. This is what I'm not sure about, as Russian-made SSN-22 Sunburn missiles could wreak havoc. Washington could only bomb from Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar or Incirlik in Turkey. Neither Qatar nor Turkey is inclined to antagonize Iran. Things don't even need to degrade towards a shooting war. All Tehran needs to do is make that threat credible. Insurance companies would stop insuring oil carriers. No oil carrier will navigate without insurance. And then there's China. Tsunami of sanctions or not, Beijing is more likely to increase oil imports from Iran. Experts who claim that Iran is becoming a pawn of Russia and China are hopelessly myopic. Russia, China, and Iran are already firmly aligned. Short of war, the Trump administration's top priority is disruption of the new Silk Roads, the Belt and Road Initiative between China and Europe, and the key economic connectivity corridor goes across Iran. This I really agree with as well. The fundamental enemy is China. But to make any divide and rule plan work, first there's got to be an attempt to lure Russia into some sort of entente cordiale. And in parallel, Persian destabilization is a must. After all, that's what the Cheney regime used to describe as the Great Prize. CNN has obtained the tape of the Cohen-Trump conversation about paying off the story of Donald's affair with playmate Karen McDougal. In this link, you hear the first part of it, which was played on CNN's Chris Cuomo show. And that took me back to Groucho Marx, or was it Harpo, who said, "Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes?" Donald Trump said he's very concerned that Russia will interfere in the upcoming congressional elections to help the Democrats. I thought that was great. Corker, talking about Trump threatening to pull security clearances, when you're going to start taking retribution against people who are your political enemies in this manner, that's the kind of thing that happens in Venezuela. I mean, it's a banana republic kind of thing. PM Theresa May is to take formal control of Brexit negotiations with the EU, and the Brexit Secretary Dominic Raab will be deputizing for her. Raab promised government will make sure there is adequate food in Britain in the event of a no Brexit deal. And then Peter Frankopan tweeted that this is what it has come to, promises that we will not starve. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar 116.90, dollar index 94.64, dollar yen 111.25, Swiss franc 0.9934. The pound 131.50, bouncing on the news that Theresa May will take over the Brexit negotiations. Aussie 0.7403, India rupee 68.865, South Korean won 11.2661, the Rial 374.71, Egyptian pound 17.8960, and the Rand has rallied to 13.2868. Dollar index, we're still in this 94, 96 range. I think when we do break the range, we'll break to the upside. Euro dollar, last at 116.90. My target is around 118, and the high target is 120.60. But overall, I still think we're going to end up lower at the end of the year. Dangerous heat sends California gas prices to a 10-year high. Apart from not requiring installation, $11.99 a month for a premium subscription, Netflix has a big price advantage over DSTV, which costs $60 a month for a premium subscription. For months, the CEO of South Africa's MultiChoice has suspected Netflix was messing with him and the rest of the DSTV parent company. Calvo Mawela was clearly spooked, yet it seemed laughable that a relative newcomer, Netflix South Africa, was going after DSTV in particular, until it actually turned DSTV's corporate paranoia into a joke. To market to South Africans fed up with DSTV, the streaming service created a character, Man with a Van. Played by prominent local comedian Jason Goliath, he makes a living faking Netflix installations. Man with a Van visits client houses with pointless wiring and over-the-top installation, even carrying an empty box with the words Premium HD, a direct dig at DSTV's premium service. Take you back to the 17th of July when Netflix stumbled after releasing earnings, and I said that I think it's only just getting started. I think the African markets, the Indian markets are big markets to go for. And the price hit $349 a share that day, and I made it my second recommendation of the year. Commodity markets, gold, let's take a look, 12.27. That's been a nice rebound from the lows. And crude oil, $68.30. Trump's trade war could cost farmers and the GOP dearly, says Bloomberg. You will recall, 9th of July, said the Chinese government has been quite surgical in its response to Trump's tariffs and is targeting the farm economy in particular. 14th of May, I wrote about how I could see all the ingredients for baking a good old-fashioned crisis in emerging markets. Turkey's 10-year yields jumped to a fresh high of almost 18% as central bank left rates unchanged, and the lira slumped more than 3% and almost hit a record low yesterday as well. Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, otherwise known as MBZ, received the leaders of Eritrea and Ethiopia at a tripartite summit in Abu Dhabi after the two African nations struck a peace deal. And really, those seem to be betting heavily on Ethiopia and Eritrea, possibly at the expense of Somalia and Djibouti. Photos how Africa's youngest leader transformed troubled Ethiopia in just 100 days. That's from Quartz Africa. With his youthful popularity, Abiy has also become a sort of consigliere of cool, appearing at a concert with Eritrean strongman Isaias Afewerki, and scheduling a dinner date with the famous humanoid robot Sophia, some of whose software was developed in Ethiopia. He has also appeared at rallies wearing a t-shirt with a Nelson Mandela fist-clinched photo above a slogan that read, "No one is free until the last one is free." Severally, I've said that these 90 or so days represent the most consequential arrival of an African politician on the African stage since Mandela walked out of prison in 1990. No one is free until the last one is free. That was the T-shirt he wore the day of the grenade attack. PM Abiy has made so many pivots, it's head spinning. But he has read the writing on the wall, particularly when it comes to the economy. And Ethiopia is talking about how they could sell the airlines, hotel and airports and investor hunt. Ethiopian Airlines Enterprise is emerging as the flag bearer of plans by Africa's fastest growing economy to open up to foreign investors after decades as a closed shop. Interesting article about what might come for sale in the short term. Bemba's coming back to the Congo on August the 1st. And that certainly is a potential political earthquake about to hit Kinshasa. On his first day of a 2-day state visit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with President Kaguta Museveni, and their respective delegations held bilateral talks at the State House in Entebbe. Even before the vote, Zimbabwe's election is not credible, says the Mail and Guardian. On July 30th, Zimbabweans will elect a new president for the first time, without Robert Mugabe's name appearing on the ballot. It is now less than a week until the polls open. However, the actions taken by the new government of Emerson Mnangagwa have already made a free, fair and credible election impossible. Just last week, for example, the country's electoral commission, already viewed as a partisan institution that favours the ruling party, changed the position of polling booths so that they are now in full view of officials and political party agents, a move that fatally undermines the secrecy of the ballot. The British Embassy in the capital Harare is also thought to be especially eager to normalise relations with Zimbabwe. If the poll is good enough, a crude ethos has seemingly developed that a lack of violence somehow equates to a credible election. It does not. Election observers should not be fooled. The lack of blood in the streets does not mean that the vote reflects the will of the Zimbabwean citizenry. 8 ways that the vote has already been rigged. The election body is not independent. Concerns with manipulation of the voter roll and ballot papers have been ignored. Integrity of the vote tally and data security. Denial of fair access to the media. Ballot secrecy has been deliberately undermined. Organised intimidation is subtle but widespread. Unknown militants known locally as Mabinya have suddenly appeared in villages as a flagrant effort to intimidate opposition supporters and voters. When your home has already been burnt down once, it only takes a thug shaking a matchbox for people to receive the message. So, I think if it was a free and fair election, Chamisa would win this hands down, because I think you've got a very young population, all of whom want to change. Military's refusal to accept the outcome have in the past declared that they would only accept a ZANU-PF president. A sitting cabinet minister recently repeated this claim, kept his job. A common belief is that the coup makers did not take such a risk only to hand power to an opposition party 8 months later. As I said that on the 20th of November, I said the military which launched this decapitation are certainly set to shape the outcome, but now have a tiger by the tail. And I also said that the genie is out of the bottle. I'm calling it for Nelson Chamisa. And these are some photographs from a rally he held in the Hengere Stadium. He said there is only one outcome, the people's victory. It's over and it is done. Victory is certainly certain. Ramaphosa says China is to invest $14.7 billion in South Africa. South African all shares down 4.12% year to date. Dollar versus rand, last time I checked, 13.2868, so coming back to the recent range highs. Nigeria all share down 4.68% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange up 11.09% year to date. Rwanda signed a $100 million deal for irrigation in 3 separate areas and $100 million for developing special economic zones. That's Rwanda and India. With China, we signed a loan agreement of $76 million for the road from Huye to Kibeho and for the new Bugazera Airport Access Road. Africa's Isabel dos Santos, the fall of Africa's richest woman, Maca Angola, which is Rafael Marques de Moraes. Just think for a minute, in a 2-year span, a father gave his daughter, among several contracts, 4 that were worth over $22 billion. The father is then President Jose Eduardo dos Santos, and the daughter is Isabel, Africa's richest woman. These were the golden days of the presidential family's capture of Angola, period. In the past month, with the stroke of a pen, General Tao Lourenço has annulled the 4 egregious contracts. The former princess is crying foul and is threatening to sue the Angolan state. However, the state is calling out her bluff. Her fortune is about to tumble like a house of cards, just as her father's power fell flat once he left office after 38 years. Ultimately, this is the disheartening tale of an African woman who chose to be an insensitive and insatiable robber baron when she had the opportunity to be a transformer. She could have done some good for her country and people and still be filthy rich. Now it is the path of infamy. Press release on the revised proposal of the expression of interest on Imperial Bank. This is from KCB. Nairobi all shares up 0.69% this year. The NSE 20 is down 10.75% this year. My piece over the weekend was about Safaricom porting its M-Pesa platform into Ethiopia, and I also did a small podcast about the article as well. And that's at the bottom of Rich Wrap-Ups. Thank you kindly.